Good afternoon, fam. I'm back with some breaking information, some breaking news. Um, Hope everyone's doing well. Hope everyone is staying safe. Hope everyone is being smart. Hope you are looking into uh, exercising your Second Amendment rights because more than ever, we need it right now. Foundational Black Americans, more than ever, we need right now to be exercising our Second Amendment rights. Um, I hope you're having these conversations within your family, with your friends, with your coworkers, with the people that you party with the people that you hang with, whatever the case, because more than ever, they're putting the evidence out there and they're letting us know as foundational Black Americans that we are at war. So for people who have ever doubted that, and for people who are talking about they doing all of this so that they can start a race war and all of this, we're in a race war. We've been in a race war. So they don't need to do this to start a race war. We've been in a race war. In foundational Black Americans have been in a race war for the past 400 and some years here in what is now the United States of America. So understand they're not doing these things to get us into a race war. They're doing these things because we are already in a race war. We as Black folks just haven't realized that, and we just haven't started to fight back. So that's the reason why we're the ones that are getting all the casualties of war, is because we don't realize that we're at war. But white supremacy has been known that we are at war. I want to urge y'all to be cautious, to pay attention, to do your research before you report certain things, because there's a story on Bahamas Press, and it's Wednesday, June 17, 2020, and an unidentified woman in Georgia was found hanging from a tree overnight. And it goes on to describe an unidentified woman was found hanging from a tree overnight near a Walmart on Old National Highway. Well, in researching this story, before I brought this story to you, in researching this story, I found out that actually this was from May 2018. And it was actually reported on CBSnews.com May 14th, 2018. And let me read you a little bit of that report so that you'll know it's the same thing. This was May 14, 2018. Authorities have responded to a disturbing discovery in Georgia. CBS affiliate WGCL in Atlanta reports that police say a woman's body was found hanging from a tree outside a Walmart location in South Fulton early Monday morning. Police say the body was found at the Walmart on Old National Highway near the intersection of Flat Shoals Road. The woman has not been identified. So if you hear reports of a woman recently, a Black woman recently being found hung outside of Walmart in Georgia, that's an old story. So that's not anything new that just happened. That's something that happened back in 2018. So I would urge people that are reporting this stuff, and I would urge people that are finding out this information, that you go back, you check your information, you verify, because you don't want to put out any false information, and you don't want to put out any old information. There's enough going on right now that we don't need to put out anything old, and we don't need to put out anything fake or anything false. There's enough of real stuff going on right now. So I just wanted to let y'all know that if you hear anything about a Black woman being found hung outside of Walmart in Georgia, that's an old story from 2014. Okay. But let's go to what's real, because there's, like I said, there's enough real stuff going on that we don't need to report on old stuff, and we don't need to report on fake, false stuff. This just came out. A young Black woman by the name of Nakia Crawford was shot to death in a car Monday with her grandmother. She was 18 years old. She had just graduated from high school, and her and her grandmother were out that Monday afternoon running errands, and Let me read the story to you. This is coming from news5cleveland.com. $50,000 reward offered for information leading to indictment of Nakia Crawford's killer. A $50,000, and this was posted at 2:01 p.m. June 16, 2020. And it was updated at 11:17 p.m. June 16, 2020. Akron, Ohio. A $50,000 reward is being offered for information leading to the arrest and indictment of the person or persons responsible for the shooting death of Nakia Crawford, an 18-year-old woman who had just graduated from high school, an 18-year-old child. As far as I'm concerned, if she was white, they would have called her a 18-year-old. They would have called her a teenager or whatever. But they would not have called her at 18 and just graduating from high school. They would not have called her a woman. Okay, she was a child. I and our entire community is mourning the loss of Nakia Crawford, Akron Mayor Dan Horrigan said at a news conference Tuesday. Her senseless killing has rightfully impacted each and every one of us in a very personal way. Nakia was only 18 years old, had just graduated from North High School, and had her future all decided at Central State University. So she was heading to Central State University. Now, because of a tragic act of incomprehensible violence, the future she dreamed of was stolen from her, and she deserves justice. Crawford's family, her own family, is donating $20,000 in reward money to Summit County Crime Stoppers, Horrigan announced. Dr. Cliff Devaney, president and CEO of Summa Health, is donating an additional $25,000 to Crime Stoppers in Nakia's name. Those donations, along with the original $5,000 offered by Summit County Crime Stoppers, makes the total $50,000 in reward money for any information that could lead to the apprehension of her killers, her murderers. My heart goes out to Nakia and her family, Devaney said. I have been a lifelong resident of Akron, and this is such a great, tragic event and something that has really torn at my heart. My hope is this doesn't get swept under the rug, that people remember Nakia's life mattered. She had her whole life in front of her. There's so much negativity going on in the world, and I thought we wanted to bring attention to this in a way that we could get even the smallest amount of information to get her justice. Deputy Chief Jesse Leeser provided some additional information about the incident during the news conference Tuesday. He said that on Sunday, June 14th, shortly after 1 p.m., so it was Sunday, Crawford was running errands with her grandmother in her white 2017 Chevrolet Malibu. So, based on the car that this young woman was driving, and based on the fact that her own family has put up $20,000 worth of reward money, y'all can't come up with this. Y'all white supremacists and racists can't come up with this. Well, she was a hood chick, or she was from the hood, or she was ratchet, or she was doing something wrong, or she deserved to be killed, or she brought it on herself, or whatever. It's obvious that this young woman came from probably an upper middle class family, an upper middle class black family. For them to be able to come up with $20,000 just like that for reward money, and her just graduating from high school and already driving a 2000 Chevrolet Malibu, these won't hood folk. These won't ratchet hood folk like y'all try to act like all black people are. And every time somebody black do something, then you want to try to dig around in their background to see if they got a rap sheet, or to see if they ever did anything wrong, or if they ever made any mistakes in life. Crawford and her grandmother were heading east on West North Street and stopped for a red light on Howard Street. Witnesses said a black newer model car, possibly a Chevrolet Camaro or a similar vehicle, stopped behind Crawford's vehicle. It then pulled up alongside the driver's side, and an unknown suspect or suspects fired multiple rounds into Crawford's car. The suspect vehicle then drove east on West North Street through the intersection and continued eastbound, Lisa said. Witnesses also said the suspect vehicle had tinted windows and possibly a pink insignia or writing on the hood. Crawford was shot multiple times and died later at the hospital, Lisa said. Her grandmother was not injured. Akron police officers stopped multiple vehicles matching the suspect vehicle description and interviewed all those individuals, Lisa said. There were no traffic cameras in the area. We have devoted hundreds of man hours to investigating this crime, and we will continue to do so, Lisa said. We are asking the public to please provide information about this murder. Somebody knows something. And then they got a video where you can watch the press conference. Her death has rocked the Akron community. Last week, she graduated from Akron North High School and was planning on studying computer technology at Central State University in the fall. Crawford's uncle, Terrell Fletcher, urged anyone with information on the homicide to come forward with information, including the killer. Just turn yourself in. We need justice for my niece. It's not right. It's not fair. She had a lot going for herself, and someone took it away. So they had a protest Tuesday. And then they go into talking about the family and all of this kind of stuff and information about her and all of that. And then they got the information down there where you can call all these different law enforcement officers if you have any information about this crime. Now, there's another report from news5cleveland.com. Let me find what I'm looking for. Officers recovered shell cases from the scene. No arrests have been made. Akron Public Schools Superintendent David James said in a statement that this is the second student in a week to die from gun violence. So I'm going to have to dig and do some research to find out what's going on as far as that first student is concerned. But he said that this is the second student in a week to die from gun violence. Police are following up on reports that the shooter was a white male traveling in a black sports car with tinted windows. So witnesses have identified that it was a white male driving in this black sports car. Like they said in the last article, it could be a black Chevrolet Camaro or whatever, but it was a newer model black sports car with tinted windows. Akron police released images of a vehicle that detectives believe may have been involved in the homicide. And they've got a couple of pictures here of this black, and it does look like a black Chevrolet Camaro. Anyone with information regarding this incident or the vehicle shown above is asked to call police at, and it gives you the number. So I'll have both of these articles linked in the description box. But I'm also going to research and find out exactly what happened as far as the other student that they said that died within this week in gun violence. But again, this young black 18-year-old, she had just graduated from high school. She was on her way to college in the fall. She was out with her grandmother that Sunday. They were running errands. A car pulled up behind her, then went along on the driver's side. She was shot there were multiple shots inside the vehicle. She was shot multiple times. She died at the hospital. Her grandmother was not injured. There's a $50,000 reward out for any information that could lead to the apprehensions of her killer or killers. But yeah, it's getting real out here. It's been real out here, but it's getting even realer. So how anybody can say that they're doing all of this to start a race war? Okay, well, the race war been going on. It's just black folks aren't participating in it, except for it to be the victims of it. But it's been a race war, okay? So this is just, another example of what's going on. It's another example that we've got to talk to our children. You understand what I'm saying? We've got to talk to our teenagers. We've got to let them know what's going on. We have got to be honest with them and let them know what's going on. We got to stop this bullshit that racism is dead, that white supremacy doesn't exist, that everybody's equal in this country. We've got to stop that bullshit. We've got to stop that bullshit that Obama tried to spread out to us, talking about we're living in a post-racial society. No, we're living in the same racist, white supremacist society we've always lived in. And we've got to be honest with our children about that. But before we can be honest with our children about it, we've got to be honest with ourselves about it. And we've got to admit and accept that it is what it is. And that we still live in a country that black folks are discriminated against. Black folks are murdered. Black folks, are brutalized. Black folks, all of that is happening to us now the same way it always has happened to us over the last 400 years, simply because of the color of our skin. And we've got to stop being afraid to admit it. We've got to stop being afraid to talk about it. We've got to stop being afraid to talk to our children about it. We've got to stop acting like we live in a truly integrated society, because we don't. Our society is just as segregated as it has ever been. Just because we no longer have separate water fountains and separate bathrooms and separate restaurants and all of that kind of stuff, that doesn't mean that we have integrated. So folks have got to be honest with their children, and they've got to sit down and they've got to let their children know that we are at war. We are at war with racists and white supremacists. And all of them are not white. There are black people that have the white supremacy mindset. And we've got to sit down and we've got to talk to our children about this. We've got to sit down and we've got to have history lessons with our children about this and let them know what they are facing. Because we are sending them out unprepared. We are sending them out unprotected by giving them this bullshit that they live in this equal society, or this society where racism is dead, or that racism died with slavery, or that racism died with the end of Jim Crow. No, it did not. And because parents are not having these conversations with their children, because parents are not being honest with their children, they're sending their children out unprepared as soft targets. Just because you live in a nice house, just because you live in a nice neighborhood, just because you got a decent job, just because you can afford to send your children to college, or you can afford to buy your children some nicer things in life, that does not mean that you don't live in a racist society. That does not mean that your children are not targets. That does not mean that you are exempt from racism. So you're sending these children out here without the proper information, and they're unprepared, they're unprotected, and you're sending them out there to be soft targets for white supremacy. And most of it is because a lot of black folks just don't want to accept what is. So not only do they set themselves up, they set their children up. Because you're not having the right conversations with your children. You're not letting your children know what's really going on in this world. You're not letting your children know what's really going on right now. You're not explaining to them the reason why you got black folks out in the street protesting and demonstrating and rioting and rebelling and revolting against the system. And a lot of times because you have been programmed to believe this bull, and you have been programmed to believe in this white supremacist society, and you have been programmed to kind of have that white supremacist mindset yourself. You pass that white supremacist mindset down to your children. And they think that because they don't live in the hood, or because they don't live in the projects, or because they've never been in trouble with the law or whatever, they think that they're separate. They're somehow different from other black folks. They think that they're somehow better than other black folks. Understand, this has nothing to do with money. This has nothing to do. White supremacy doesn't respect you just because you have money, just because you have means. Look at Bill Cosby. Look how rich Bill Cosby was. And look how white supremacy brought him down. Look how rich Michael Jackson was. And look how white supremacy brought him down. Look how rich Kobe Bryant was. And look how white supremacy sent Gail to try to bring him down. Gail King. Has nothing to do with money. Has nothing to do with what you possess as far as money is concerned. You're black. That's the problem with the LGBTQ community right now. The LGBTQ community, the black LGBTQ community, is being used by white supremacy against the black community. Why? Because these black LGBTQs want to believe that there's something else other than black. They want to put everything else that they got going on before the fact that they're black. They want to be gay, or they want to be lesbian, or they want to be queer, or they want to be transgender, or whatever before they're black. Because that makes them think that they get to fit into white society, and that white society won't look at them as being black first. But it makes no difference what your sexual orientation is. It makes no difference what your gender identification is. It makes no difference what your religion is, what your beliefs are, what your political affiliations may be. If you're black first in their eyes. And you should be black first in your own eyes. That's the reason why we got so many young people out there now. While the genuine protesters are out there protesting injustice and protesting racism and protesting white supremacy, you got some of these other folks out there, some of these other white young folks out there, young black people out there dancing and twerking and hugging and kissing on folks and all of this kind of stuff, and trying to turn this whole thing into something about sexuality or about your gender or whatever, and trying to separate black folks. That's the reason why you got the LGBTQ community all of a sudden now talking about all Black Lives Matter. Because they want to separate themselves from black. When people say all Black Lives Matter, well, the movement itself is not something to be a part of. The movement itself is LGBTQ. The movement itself is divisive. The movement itself is against black men, black families, and all of that. But when we say Black Lives Matter, we're talking about all black lives. We're not talking about female black lives. We're not talking about male black lives. We're not talking about straight black lives versus LGBT black lives. We're talking about all black lives. When we say all Black Lives Matter, that's the reason why Tariq came up with the new hashtag to put an end to all of that, so that we can get our movement back. Because we've got the illegal aliens, we've got the immigrants, we've got LGBTQ, we've got all of these different groups and organizations trying to hijack this movement and trying to get the focus off of what the focus is supposed to be on, and that's police brutality. That's racial injustice. That's white supremacy. And white supremacy all up in and all around the police force and law enforcement. That's what we need to be focusing on. But all of these other groups are coming in, trying to hijack the movement, trying to separate, trying to divide, and all of that, so that they can benefit from it. That's what people have always done. People have always, other groups have always come in and tried to benefit from our struggle, from the black struggle in America. So that's the reason why Tariq came up with the new hashtag, no anti-black racism. No anti-black racism. And that does it right there. That puts an end to the whole thing. Because that's what this is all about. This is about anti-black racism. Anti-black racism in the government, anti-black racism in law enforcement, anti-black racism in all of these other groups, anti-black racism. That's what it's all about. So no anti-black racism is the new hashtag. Because we've got to get this back. We've got to get the focus back on what the focus is supposed to be on in the first place. We can't lose focus and be jumping all around all over the place and letting this group co-op and that group co-op and letting all these different people hijack what this is really all about. This is really all about destroying the system of white supremacy and replacing it with a system of justice. This is not about your sexuality. This is not about your gender identity. This is not about your belief system or your religion. This isn't about any of that. Because if you think for 1 minute that your sexuality is going to save you when the race soldiers and the slave patrols come after you, if you think for 1 minute, if you are black, if you think for 1 minute that your sexuality or your sexual orientation or your gender or whatever is going to save you, then you're wrong. You just seen here, they hanging black men, and they done hung a little black woman. They hung a black girl in South Africa. Now they done shot up this little black girl in her car. So your gender is not going to save you. Your sexual orientation is not going to save you. Your religious beliefs are not going to save you. If you black, you black. And like I said, they see you as black first. You need to start seeing yourself as black first and stop with all of this bullshit. You got folks out twerking. You got men out twerking. You got women out twerking. You got folks out doing all kind of little nasty dances and all this dancing going on. And folks doing the electric slide in the middle of protests and all of that kind of stuff. And that takes away from the validity of what those protesters are out there, those genuine protesters, what they're out there trying to do. So black folks, we got to get off the bullshit. We got to get off the bullshit. That's the very reason why the powers that be pay us absolutely no mind. That's the very reason why they hand us all this bullshit and they kneel with us and they kiss on us and they hug on us and they act like they sympathizing with us and all of this kind of stuff is because they don't take us seriously. And the reason why they don't take us seriously is because of the stupid shit that's being done right now. With LGBTQ coming out trying to hijack the movement. Black Lives Matter trying to hijack the movement. All of these different folks trying to hijack the movement instead of all black Americans banding together. Makes no difference what your sexual orientation is, may be. Makes no difference what your gender is or your gender identity. That's not the issue right now. The issue is black folks are dying in the streets. Black folks are being murdered. White supremacy and white supremacists and racists are killing black folks, unarmed black folks in the streets. And they ain't asking no questions. They ain't pulling out the gun and saying, well, are you trans? Are you a trans man? Are you a trans woman? Are you gay? Or are you Christian? Are you Muslim? They ain't asking no questions. They just pulling the trigger. Why? Because all they see is black. I just needed to get that little rant out there. And just to emphasize that law enforcement, the modern day slave patrols, because that's all it is. You understand what I'm saying? The modern day slave patrols, that's what law enforcement is. That's what it is. That's what it's always been. And that's what it always will be. Law enforcement, again, was created by white supremacy for white supremacy. Law enforcement is the enforcement arm, the military arm of white supremacy. That is the reason why you see with all of this fake legislation that everybody's throwing out at us now, you don't see anything about punishment for these police officers. You don't see anything about real punishment for law enforcement. I'll say it again. Why? Because white supremacy is not going to punish law enforcement for doing what law enforcement was created to do. And that is to police the black community, to keep the black populace under control. Whether it takes violence, brutality, terrorism, murder, rape, whatever. Now, we done already heard from the New York police union where they up there whining and crying and talking about they ain't being disrespected, they being disrespected, you know what I'm saying? And how, you know, most of their encounters are positive, most of their encounters with the public are positive, and how they don't like the fact that they being treated the way they being treated and all of this. That's what the New York unions had to say. Well, now I want you to hear what the Louisville, Kentucky, some of the retired police officers and all of that have to say as far as how they feel about the way they're being treated. You done already had the police I think it was in Buffalo. You done already had, I think it was 59 of them resign after those 2 police officers were charged with pushing that old 75-year-old man down and busting his head open and all of that. Okay, well, when they realized they were a part of a special unit, well, when they realized that they're not going to be able to treat people any kind of way, and they're not going to be able to be violent towards people any kind of way that they want to anymore without there being some kind of repercussions, 59 of them, the whole unit, resigned. Now, they are still regular police officers, but they all resigned from that particular unit, that special unit. You got police officers resigning in Atlanta after all of this backlash and all this blowout and everything from the murder of Rashad Brooks and him being shot in the back. So you got police officers all over the place whining and crying and resigning and all of this kind of stuff. Why? Because there's a possibility now, because people are looking at, one, first, defunding police departments, and they don't want to lose that money. And 2, people are actually looking into and demanding punishment for these police officers. They're actually questioning all of this qualified immunity and all of that these police officers have, that have them thinking that they are above the law and they can do anything that they want to do because they have these police unions and all of that that's going to back them up in anything that they do, and going to provide attorneys and legal assistance and all of that for them in anything that they do, and they can't be sued. The individual police officers cannot be sued for wrongful death or for excessive force or whatever the case may be. So that's the reason why they're whining and crying now. Is because for the first time, there is actually real possibility that they might be held accountable for their actions and be punished for their crimes, like everybody else has to be punished for their crimes. So I just want you to hear this from current and former Louisville Metro Police Department officers to mayor. We are under attack. So it's all right for them to be attacking everybody else. It's all right for them to be attacking the black community. It's all right for them to be going in black communities and policing folks with violence and brutality and just killing folks indiscriminately and just having a field day in the black community. But now that eyes are being turned on them, and folks are actually calling for, demanding that they be held accountable for their actions, and police departments are being scrutinized. Now they want to complain, talking about we under attack. I want you to listen to this.
Enough is enough. The cry from retired and other LMPD officers rallying today over what they say is a lack of city leadership and a lack of care for good police officers who are trying to do their job, but feel that they're under attack. Wait, the news reporter Connie Leonard has the story from Old Louisville.
Calling it a rally and not a protest, both off-duty and retired police officers meeting today to ask the city to stop painting police officers with the same brush and showing some respect.
Again, these officers refuse to abandon the citizens in this city the way your elected officials have.
saying they have more worries than the coronavirus. A big crowd gathered closely behind retired LMPD officer George Rodman, whose son, Officer Nick Rodman, was killed in 2017 in the line of duty. Rodman blamed Mayor Greg Fisher, Metro Council members, and the media for the unrest we've seen in the past couple of weeks.
Why are crimes being committed daily in the name of protest that would not be tolerated otherwise?
One of those crimes came to the police officers' memorial downtown.
With fallen officers' names on it was vandalized due to the stand-down order. That's a slap in the face to every former, current, and fallen officer and their families. My son's name's on that wall.
Rodman says officers working long shifts without a contract are being spit on, attacked, and shot at.
Speak up! You gotta speak up!
Longtime officer John Keeling reminded officers to go to work, watch one another's back, and honor their oath.
With any profession, you got the good ones, you got the great ones, and you got the bad ones. Right? The bad ones are causing these uneducated, ignorant people to throw a blanket over the entire profession.
Former LMPD Major Todd Kessler.
I don't want to hear anymore, because you just heard him call all the protesters out there ignorant and uneducated. You understand what I'm saying? Because we are tired of police brutality, because we are tired of police officers being allowed to do whatever they want to do and just walk away from it. We are tired of the citizens having to obey the law, and the citizens have to worry about being beaten and being brutalized and being murdered for the least little thing to nothing. And police officers can kill people with impunity and walk away from it. But you hear he had the nerve to call the protesters uneducated, ignorant people. And I'm so sick of hearing about all police officers aren't bad. There are some good police officers. Okay, well, if there's some good police officers, then the good police officers need to step up, and they need to be the ones to handle the bad police officers. They need to be the ones to call out the bad police officers. They need to be the ones to make sure that the bad police officers are brought to justice, and that the bad police officers are charged, arrested, prosecuted, convicted, and all of that, just like any other citizens of the United States. But I'm just, you got to go to work, cover each other's backs. That's the problem. You've been covering each other's backs. That's the problem. You cover each other under any circumstance. Under any circumstance, I got your back no matter what you do, even though I'm looking at you do wrong, even though I'm looking at you break the law, even though I'm looking at you operate outside of police policy. But I got your back. Well, just like y'all got each other's backs, we got each other's backs out here in the streets. But I just want you to see, and I just want you to know how law enforcement feels about what's going on right now. How they feel about being scrutinized, how they feel about the possibility of these police departments being defunded and all of that. And they're not happy about it at all. And you got to remember, white supremacists controls law enforcement. White supremacists upholds the violence and the brutality and the murders committed by law enforcement. So if you want to know why all of a sudden all of these black folks are being found hung, and all of a sudden black girls are being killed just sitting in the car at a stoplight, and folks are coming up just shooting at them and killing them, if you're wondering why all of this is going on right now, it's because white supremacy is sanctioning for law enforcement to retaliate. They're not being able to retaliate the way they want to retaliate in the streets, by beating the protesters, by taking tear gas and flash bangs and rubber bullets to the peaceful protesters. So since they can't commit their violence in the streets anymore, now they're doing it secretly. Now they're doing it outside of law enforcement. Now they're doing it when they take the uniform off, because they're not being allowed to do it in the streets anymore. Because they have all of these stand down orders from all these different mayors and all these different governors, and telling them they got to back up from the protesters, and they can't keep on shooting tear gas at these peaceful protesters, and these flash bangs and harming folks, and going in beating protesters and taking cars, running over them like they did in New York, and all of this kind of stuff. So now that they can't exercise that brutality against the people one way, they're doing it another way. Now that they can't just go out in the streets and kill and brutalize indiscriminately, now they're doing it with the uniforms off. They're taking the uniforms off and they're doing it. So you got to see it for what it is. Like I've said before, and I will continue to say this: white supremacy is going to have its needed violence one way or the other. Because that's what white supremacy is all about. Violence. Control through violence. Through brutality. Through terror. That's what white supremacy is all about. That's how white supremacy maintains its control. Through violence, brutality, and terror. And it's going to exercise its control. It's going to exercise that mechanism of the need for violence one way or the other. So either you're going to let us do it with the uniform on in the streets with the citizens, or we're going to take the uniforms off and we're going to do it with one individual at a time. But either way, we're going to have our quota of violence. That bloodlust has to be satisfied, and one way or the other, they're going to make sure it's satisfied. Now, of course, they're going to begin with the black folks. Of course, they're going to begin with the black community. But as you have seen with video after video after video after video, now they're no longer just brutalizing black folks. Now they're also brutalizing white folks, old folks, white women. White women are no longer off limits. For 400 plus years, black folks have been told that the white woman is off limits, that the white woman is a sacred cow. You don't touch that. That's the reason why so many black men are dead now. Because of that white woman, because of supposedly the sacredness of that white woman. And all that white woman had to do was say that that black man looked at her a certain kind of way, or winked at her, or spoke to her. And even if it was a lie, 9 times out of 10, that black man lost his life for it. But now you see out in the streets, white men brutalizing white women. In the streets, in public. Why? Because white supremacy has to get control of this situation. And the only way white supremacy knows to exercise its control is through violence, brutality, and murder. And that's exactly what these off-duty police officers are doing. Do I believe that law enforcement is involved in all of this? Yes, I believe law enforcement is involved in these hangings. I believe law enforcement is involved in these shootings. I believe law enforcement is involved in the death of this young 18-year-old woman, Nakia Crawford. I believe law enforcement is involved in all of this. Why? Because white supremacy is a little shaken right now. White supremacy is a little concerned right now. White supremacy is a little worried right now. Why? Because the slaves have risen up again. The slaves are revolting. The slaves are rebelling. So those slave patrols got to get out there and got to do what they were created to do. Get control of them slaves. Get them slaves back in their place. And you use as much violence, as much brutality, as much murder as you have to use to get them back under control. So I just wanted to bring y'all this information. I just wanted to let y'all know what was going on. I want, and I definitely want to let you know that you have got to have these conversations with your children. You have got to have these conversations with your children from about 5, 6 on up. White supremacy does not take a day off, and white supremacy does not discriminate as far as black folks are concerned. At this point, they're not discriminating at all. Why? Because you got white folks out there that are rebelling with the slaves. You got white folks out there that have the audacity to join with the slaves and rebel against the system and speak against the system and revolt and rise up against the system. So at this point, those white folks don't look any different than those slaves. What they used to call them back in the day, nigger lovers. And those nigger lovers don't look any different than those slaves. Those white folks had the nerve to get off code. Those white folks had the nerve to get off code with the white supremacist system and join with the slaves. Whether they joining with the slaves for the right reason or not, they still out there. And white supremacy doesn't ask questions. If you white and you out there with the slaves, unless they put you out there, unless white supremacy sent you out there to infiltrate and mingle with the slaves, they're not asking any questions. And they know who they put out there. They know who they sent out there. So you got to talk to your children. You got to let your children know, and you got to make sure that they understand that there is no common ground with white supremacy. There is no getting along with white supremacy. There is no appealing to the heart and the morality and the soul of white supremacy. Why? Because white supremacy does not have a heart. It does not have morality. It does not have a soul. It has a purpose, one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to maintain control under any circumstances. And it uses law enforcement to do that. It has always used law enforcement to do that. It will always use law enforcement to do that. You need to train your children and teach your children to understand that there is no reforming law enforcement. Law enforcement cannot be reformed. Why? Because white supremacy cannot be reformed. And law enforcement is the creation of white supremacy. So please talk to your children. Please stop sending your children out here unprepared, unprotected, unarmed. And I'm not talking about armed as far as a weapon is concerned. I'm talking about unarmed as far as not having the necessary knowledge that they need. Sometimes the right knowledge is the only weapon that you need. Because if you have the right knowledge, then that knowledge will guide your movements. That knowledge will guide your steps. And that knowledge will help protect you. But you're sending your children out here unarmed, unprotected, unprepared, without any knowledge of what's really going on, without the truth. And the truth is, we live in a white supremacist system. Law enforcement is the creation of that system. And that has not changed in 400 and some years. You need to teach your children that laws will not change it. If laws could change it, there are hundreds of laws on the books that were meant to change it, and they couldn't. So please, I beseech you to have these conversations with your children and stop sending your children out here to be soft targets for white supremacy. Now I'll keep you updated as far as what's going on with Nakia Crawford's case. But until black folks get it together, until black folks really start talking to their kids, until black folks really start accepting the fact that we are at war, that we have been at war for 400 and some years, and that the war is not going to end. The war is not going to end by us just going along with to get along, and by us feeling like we can reform white supremacy and we can reform these laws. The war is not going to go away. If we want to survive, we're going to have to fight back. Point blank, period. We're going to have to fight back. And the first step in that fight is to arm yourself with the truth, to arm yourself with knowledge. That's the first step to fighting back. So I will be keeping y'all informed. Y'all make sure that y'all get down in this description box. Make sure that you read about this young woman. Make sure that you read about what these police officers have to say. You know, do a little Google search and you'll see what the police officers had to say in New York. And you'll see about all these police resigning and all of this kind of stuff. And all of them rising up, talking about how upset they are and how disrespected they feel and all of this kind of stuff. Why? Because folks got the nerve to be trying to buck the system. And they are the enforcement arm of the system, of this white supremacist system. Y'all make sure to like this video. Please make sure to share this video. Have these conversations, especially with your children, with your nieces, your nephews, your cousins, your grandchildren. You know, make sure that, you know, children in your neighborhood, children that are a part of what organization you might be a part of. If you mentor children, if you're a teacher, make sure you have these conversations with these children and stop lying to them. Stop lying to them. Stop filling their heads up with this bullshit about some kind of American dream or about their being treated equally in the United States and racism doesn't exist anymore. And stop lying to them and just be honest with them and tell them the truth so that they can at least know what's going on and they can go through the steps of protecting themselves when they're out there among these white supremacists. So please share this information. Subscribe to the channel if you have already not subscribed. For all those who have subscribed, I really, really appreciate it. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate your support. For those who have supported the channel in other ways, I thank you. I appreciate it. You don't know how much it means to me. Thank you so much. Hit that bell notification so you can be notified when we upload videos. But please, y'all, Black folks get on code. Foundational Black Americans get on code. And get your children on code. And stop lying to your children. And be honest with them and tell them the truth. Y'all have a good day.